Hello, my friend, and welcome to Skinny and Secure, hosted by me, Johnny Seifert. This is a celebrity mental health podcast where I say it's okay to not be okay. And if you have the same mantra as me, whether you're watching or listening, give a 5-star rating, click that follow button, and let's keep spreading the word. It's okay to not be okay. Now, let me tell you about my guest today. My guest today, you were known as a Gleek, as he was part of the first class in William McKinley High School that we saw sing and bring their social issues together, where he played Artie Abrams. Since then, he's part of Virtually Famous on E4, a contestant on the X Factor Celebrity, and RuPaul's Celebrity Drag Race in America. But he has swapped the TV to the theatre as he is now appearing at the Southwark Playhouse from the 23rd of May to the 28th of June as Xanthias in The Frog. So without further ado, I'm delighted to welcome to Sukanika, the one, the only, Kevin McHale. Hello, my friend.
How's it going?
I'm so excited to speak to you because I was such a gleek growing up. I was at the O2 dancing away to a loser like me,
No,
doing the L sign. Oh, so thank you, my friend, for giving me a great childhood.
it's amazing. The amount of people I have met I've been here for 3.5 weeks now that were at one of the O2 shows. I never meet people who are at the tour. And it's been so nice to actually run into people because, at home I try to explain to people like how significant that experience was in performing at the O2. And so it's nice to hear, you know, and meet people like you who were there and hopefully enjoyed yourself.
Yeah, well, a
It was
little
such a
bit.
special, special time.
Well, this was the thing. So when Glee came out, I remember so clearly, and we met last week, I think it was, and we were talking about the phenomenon that
Yeah.
Evil had of it, and what we were talking about was the fact that on a Monday night you would watch the episode. So whatever happens, let's say it's Journey, Don't Stop Believing, and straight away you would have to go and find a website to download all the songs, and then your
Yeah.
playlist would just be Glee covers. And even now, I still listen to the Glee version of River Deep Mountain High to Don't Stop Believing, and it was also the way to find out about music. Like I remember because
Yeah.
when we were kids, age 14, 15, we probably didn't know who Madonna was. We didn't know what the Rocky Horror Show was, and yet you had these specials. And
Mhm.
actually, it was an education not just about social issues, but actually a journey through music to really understand all the different songs that were out there.
Yeah, and it was for all of us on the show as well. I didn't come from like the musical theater world, so I was learning about all these famous musical theater songs that I probably should have known about. And on the flip side, a lot of the theater people were learning more about the current music and some of like the classic art, like River Deep Mountain High. Um, and so it was a nice trade-off of, we were reflecting what was happening with the public, the education of music, and that was really, really incredible. Especially like you said, some of the first times I heard some of these songs, it was our versions of them, and they were really great versions of them. And it was special to get to see, like Amber Riley or Leah or Kristen Chenoweth do one of these songs, and that was my introduction to them. And you have some of the best voices in the world doing it.
Well, hold on a minute, because then you get to a song like Proud Mary and what it meant for Tina Turner. But actually, in the past 20 years, Proud Mary has been your song. It was dedicated to you, Artie.
I don't know if I can claim it as my song,
Do you not hear
but
the Glee version where it goes, "This one's for you, Artie"?
oh no, I do. It feels like a sickness at this point. Whenever we covered 700 something songs,
Did you?
and when I'm in public and you hear one of them, because you're going to hear one of them at least a day, and it is very hard to separate the Glee version from the actual original version. And sometimes I'm like, ah, I wish this was the Glee version playing.
But I prefer cover versions most of the time because I think I suppose it's the arrangement that we're used to. Because I think when Glee was on and you got cast in 2008, it was in the High School Musical era, and I presume there were elements that High School Musical did really well. Let's make it into a TV show, and that's how Glee kind of came around with Ryan Murphy's version of it. And it was we wanted to feel that sense of belonging that we could fit into that school. So yes, you had the slushes and a bit of the bullying, but it was the fact of there's a sense of
Mhm.
belonging for everyone to be. Doesn't matter who you are, where you are. We're all coming together as a community based on music first and foremost.
Yeah, and I think, that's the old adage of like music is the universal language. And I think when used correctly, I was just talking to one of the creators of Glee, Ian Brennan, the other day, and how even when Glee was at its craziest and most unhinged, you could throw in a really meaningful performance and communicate things through music that you can't otherwise. And it would make the hairs on your, arms stand up. And that was some of the most beautiful and like touching things that we got to do on that show.
Can you think of a time that happened to you that you thought, I'm actually not just making a difference, but I'm actually making a change for myself and the way that I'm looking at the world now?
Hmm. Ooh, good question. A lot of the social issues that well, I mean, for me personally, I wasn't necessarily like publicly out at the time, and I was okay, with that, I guess. And being around a lot of people who came from theater that were surrounded by gay people growing up, I didn't have a lot of gay friends growing up at all. And Glee was obviously very accepting of everything and everybody. And Ryan Murphy, who was an out successful gay man, was the lead of the show. Being around that sort of I don't know, group of people, it was liberating, it was freeing, and it was almost it was like the opposite of, like, you had to prove people had to prove they were straight. Everyone was assumed gay, which was like a really nice place to be in, especially as a 20-year-old when I got cast in that. And coming from the music world, which was very sort of like, you're straight. You don't, you have to. I was okay with pretending to be straight for forever. And some of those lessons on the show, like the Kurt storyline that was happening, it went from being like, I'm just here doing my job and I'm not really paying attention to that personally or taking any of the storyline on personally. At some point, all of that started to bleed together. And at some point, it was sort of like a switch in my head, like, what am I doing? This is like the safest place. If anything is showing me that it's okay to sort of, this sounds so cheesy, but if anything is showing me it's okay to be myself, it's this show that I'm on. We meet fans every single day who are telling us how it's helped them and how it's helped them communicate who they are to their family who may not understand it because they see it represented on TV. And so I got the message a little late. It took like halfway through season one, but eventually, I think, yeah, those lessons started um, helping me and changing how I saw the world. And as the show went on, with all kinds of different social issues, and especially like season six, when we get into like a trans storyline and learning about, I wasn't exposed to trans people that much. And those things like that were really monumental to being, things that ended up being very, very important to me, I was also introduced to through the show.
And how did that affect the Kevin McHale who was going home? So yes, on the show, on the set, you were seeing these issues and you were going, "Oh, actually, I fit in here because this is the like a theatre world, so I can be very
Hmm.
extrovert in camp because that's what's
Hmm.
expected anyway. So I can be my authentic self." But when you were going
Hmm.
home and you were being Kevin McHale and everything was off and you were bare and you were at home, did you
Hmm.
feel a sense of, "Oh, I've been basically playing a character," and I'm not talking about Artie, but I've been playing a character of Kevin
Hmm.
on set and actually at home, I do want to just be this really introverted Kevin because I'm not comfortable with this way of life? Or did you think actually it's the other way around, that I can be really overtly camp at home, but I gotta, when I go to set, yes, I can be gay, but I can't overdo it because I don't want to misrepresent myself, if that makes sense?
It was somewhere in between, but probably more of the latter, where, like I said, it was sort of like a liberating experience where I could fully be myself at work, fully, and it was encouraged to fully be, obviously professional, all that. Um, but so much of myself and me learning to speak up for myself, um, I was deathly shy, like as a kid and as a teen. And so all of that, and the people, the friends, the crew, the cast, all of that helped me, whether I was at home or on set, there was no difference now of who I was. I could fully be me in that entire universe, which was really, really nice. And, I was one of the younger ones when the show started. And so I think being able to be around people who were a couple years older than me, felt like older siblings, um, could sort of, show me the way.
And do you regret when you did it? Do you wish you'd done it earlier? Or do you feel like you should have done it later? Or was it that was the right time for you? Because you were very public when you came out, obviously you had to be. But do you think that was the right moment? And how did you build up to that moment?
I don't know. I never really thought about it in terms of like, I guess like the official coming out was not even like a planned thing. There was some thought to at some point because I had been with my boyfriend for a couple of years of just, there had been moments of it almost coming out and not of our own decision, and that felt weird. And and it had during Glee too. Naya Rivera was someone who was like, why aren't you coming out? Like, why don't you take control of it? And I was like, hey, I don't mind. Like at work, I was fully out by, I don't know, second or third episode of Glee. So like all my friends and family knew. It just wasn't the public. And so like I wasn't thinking of myself in that way where like I had any relevance to the public. Like who they're not nobody's gonna care whether I'm gay or not. Like that's nobody's business, but also like it's not infringing upon, my daily life, my personal life. And that's what really mattered to me. But once it started to, there was like a journalist who did an interview with my boyfriend, and he was asking some like unprofessional questions. And so that made me just be like, okay, I should probably figure this out now because I like social media. I'm on social media a lot. And it started to like rub up against that of like, I was my authentic self at work all the time, at home. And I like to do that on social media and be myself, but I'm clearly leaving out this big part of me. So once I made that decision, I guess internally of, okay, I'm just going to do it at some point when it presents itself. And it did. And I made a joke and people got it and ran with it. And that was that. And it was easy. I felt like that was a very me way of doing it. Do I regret not doing it sooner? Possibly. Yeah. But, it is what it is. I do. I think had I been able to be me 100% of the time for the full run of the show and all of that, I think I probably would have had a lot of um, experiences that I didn't have otherwise.
What do you think you missed out on?
Um, I think it's just that the community of that, where I would sneak into, like, I would go to gay clubs sometimes, like Chris Colfer and I would like go to places, and people would look at me like, "Oh, what are you doing here?" And I think being able to sort of, yeah, be it like the queer community is incredible, and they also can smell inauthenticity from a mile away. And I think it would have been nice just to be able to be me and immerse myself in that community from a much earlier age. I was, to an extent, obviously, being on this show. Um, but yeah, it's different when you're living it and making friends and making your, chosen family and all of that. And I mean, the truth is also we didn't have free time to do anything. So it's not like I probably missed out on that much because we were working 16 hours a day. So yeah, we literally had no free time. We all just hung out with each other on and off screen. So I
But
don't,
also, it's the
I
thing
say
of
that maybe I missed out on things, but maybe I didn't.
Well, also, it's that thing of you've got a responsibility to the show, and you know what it's like when you've got a public profile that you've got to be careful of what you're doing because, like you say, the Paris Hiltons of the world or the newspaper journalists are looking to get that quick picture and make the quick buck. And like you say as well, when you're working on that show for 16 hours a day, it was a case of not just doing one job, but you had to act, you had to dance. I mean, dance a little bit in your wheelchair,
Yeah,
and you
yeah.
had to sing. So how did you separate that? Because if you were going in, if this was a real acting school, you'd go, right, we've got acting classes in the morning, then we've got dance, and
Hmm.
then we've got singing. But when you're making a TV production and there are elements of singing in there, but there are elements of the classroom and there are elements of just normal American life. How did they balance the storyboard and the scripts for going, right, here's singing time, here's acting time, here's dancing time in your schedules? Did they not?
Uh,
Kevin, can you just sing that? No,
it,
I can't sing that line. I'm talking over there.
yeah, it was always an adventure. There was eventually sort of a rhythm to it, and it did evolve, but it was just full on all the time. We would call it like the ultimate Glee day when you had dance rehearsal, filming, and recording on the same day, which happened quite a bit. And it was never regimented. It wasn't like a class system where you have this in the morning, this in the afternoon, and this in the evening. It was just like sometimes, okay, you have your lunch break now. Half of that's going to be used to go to the recording studio to you have to go record this full song in 30 minutes. And we're going to drive you there in a van. It's like 5 minutes from where we shot. We filmed the show. Or we had dance rehearsal. And that, I mean, all those things would just fit in where they could. If things got really crazy, sometimes we would learn dances the day of, and they would just teach us on set right before we'd film it. And then we'd just have to do it. I mean, we got used to it. Like people have always said, like nothing is harder than shooting Glee, and if you can do that, you can do anything. I think that is sort of true. we were able to do a lot. And a normal hour-long TV show takes on average 8 days to film. We were always scheduled to shoot for 8 days. It never was 8 days. I think on average it's probably 10 or 11 days. So, it was just more to do. I had friends on Modern Family and they would shoot, they it's a whole different schedule. We start at the same time, and like we're there 16 hours a day. Modern Families are they have 3 weeks on, 1 week off. They're doing maybe 5 hours a day, and you're like, what is happening? I'm like, I'm at recording studio. Like, oh no, I can't coming out with you. I have dance rehearsal for 8 hours, and then I have to go film a couple scenes that takes, another 8 hours.
But that's the amazing thing about William McKinley High, I suppose, is that it gave you that education. That we'll talk about the frogs in a second at the Southwark Playhouse, which you're doing. But that education you would have been given nowhere else to have that intensity. But also, as a performer of someone who wanted to get into the industry, to go, you are going to not just act, you're not just doing miserable stories, but you're going to act, you're going to sing, you're going to do dance, you're going to do
Yeah,
everything, and you've got that range. And if this is what you really want, and you've got that fire to be a performer, we're literally giving you everything on a silver platter. Go and enjoy it and have
yeah,
fun.
totally. And I think in a weird way, I was the one who had had the most direct experience coming into the show of that, because I started in the music business and I was in a boy band before this.
NLTs.
And yes, and I did that. I had the long dance rehearsals. I had spent so much time in recording studios. I had been on tour before. And so all of that was stuff I was used to. And so, like, and singing pop music and all of that. So, like, none of that felt new to me. The new thing was also filming an hour-long TV episode, amongst all of that, which was crazy. And so, like, for the theater people who came in, they weren't used to the recording studio and they weren't used to rehearsing like we rehearsed. And so, in that way, I felt very intimidated by them, because if you have theater training, that is a incredible weapon to have. I didn't have that, but what I did have was the recording studio, the touring, and the long hours in the dance studio that I could sort of bring to the table and also help. And Amber did too. Amber and I were sort of I guess, comparatively, the veterans of the recording studio heading into the process.
I love that. We'll show you how to stand with the microphone. We'll
Yeah,
show
we're
you
like,
how
it's
this
fine.
the desk works.
It's like, this is R&B music. Listen, you have to sing a little behind the beat. Like, you are way too on it. You gotta be a little cooler than that.
I love that. I love that. You mentioned 16 hours filming days, and you're doing about 11 days a week. Well, not 11 days a week, but 11 days to shoot one episode. So that's a lot of
Yeah.
intensity of being around the cast and the crew. The show then finishes, and two things happen. The first is we sadly lose Corey, and we lose Naya, and we lose Mark.
Hmm.
What did that do to you and the grief journey that you had to go on when it was all so public in three very different cases, and yet
Hmm.
you're trying to navigate your career, your personal life, and yet there's these unexpected deaths which are so, so, so sad that you're going to have to come to terms with at a time when everyone wants a piece of you and everyone wants to have their say on each individual case.
Hmm. It's a very, very surreal and uh, that happening on its own is a really horrible, horrific, and surreal experience. That plus the publicness of it all is a really strange, I don't know if phenomenon is the right word, but I had never experienced that before in any capacity, losing someone close to me. And so when that happened with Corey, we were still in the middle of shooting the show. And I was in London when I found out. And immediately, I for example, sorry, I'm like trying to think back to the time when I was in London, and when I found out, I was supposed to go. I was meeting up with Naya that day, and we were going to watch her boyfriend perform at a music festival. And we were like, we didn't know what to do. Grief hits everybody very differently. And I woke up to the news, and then in LA, it was my best friend roommate's birthday, and he was really close with a lot of the Glee cast and everybody. So he had like half the cast at my house in LA. And then when that happened, then everybody else just showed up to my house. And then I'm with Naya, across the world. And it was this very just surreal experience because then I went to this music festival thinking maybe the distraction would help. And then like people just knew and like casually would, turn around and be like, oh, I'm sorry about that guy. And Naya and I were like, what are we doing? We have to get out of here. This was a bad decision because of course people know instantly. You just don't think of that. And then it's like all the other calls. You get calls from producers being like, okay, here's what's going to happen. This is what we know. And you can't just, I don't know, sit with the grief. There's like business to happen. And amidst all of that. And then, um, like a couple weeks later, we're all back together and they hold a memorial on the auditorium stage, which is also very strange. And then, a crew is hundreds of people that we work with every day, and everybody deals with grief differently. And so then you're also now dealing with that, where Corey was someone that we all worked with every single day. And then you're dealing with addiction, and people have very different responses to addiction. And it was, and then it's like producers calling up and be like, hey, the Teen Choice Awards are coming up, and we think you should go and like speak on behalf of the cast. How do you feel about that? It'll be like the first public appearance. And I was like, I I guess, sure, if this is like what you guys want. They're like, what would you need? And I'm like, can I have Jenna and Amber speak with me? So like we introduced Leah and it was like everybody's perfect, I mean, first like appearance. And those things just feel so weird because it almost feels performative in a way. And you're like, we're dealing with someone who is legitimately passed away. It's not a character. This isn't a thing. This is our family. And so on all of us trying to figure out the grief and trauma of it all, and then having to balance, like I had people come up to me on the streets and say the most terrible things. And I don't know what they thought they were accomplishing, but just strangers, like wanting to gossip to me about Corey's addiction problem after he had just passed away. And that happened more times than it should have. And it's things like that. You're just like, or people would talk flippantly about it like it was a character on a TV show. So like, this is one of my closest friends you're talking about. Like, what is the disconnect here? But I think, I was able to get through that and all of the other times because our group and our bond with each other is so strong. And we just immediately sort of closed ranks and we always show up for each other still to today. And I think that was the thing of like having gone through this sort of meteoric rise of the show, that it's a very specific experience and only we understand each other's experience that way, that we're very protective of one another, we're very protective of the show, we're very protective of the crew members, of the stories, like all of it. We really really are proud of this, and like I said earlier, like obsessed with each other. We're each other's best friends. We had no time to see family or other friends, and so when it's the good and the bad, we show up for each other. And we all just spent more time with each other and stopped going out in public, because it was a really strange thing. But the day Corey passed away, my brother called me, and it was the best advice I had gotten. And he was like, "You don't know how grief is going to affect you." And he's like, "And if you're not feeling anything today, that is fine." He's like, "It may hit you today, it may hit you tomorrow, it may hit you in 2 years." He's like, "You won't know how it's going to hit you. And also just remember that it's going to impact everybody else differently and on a different timeline." And I know that seems obvious, but for someone who had never been through loss before like this, it really instantly just made me just put that into perspective and allowed, me to be kinder to myself and those around me. And like little things. Like my boyfriend at the time that I had been with for like 6 years, he knew Corey very, very well. And he immediately started playing like Glee music. And I was like, I need you to turn it off. Like, I cannot hear Corey's voice right now. But for him, that was really healing. For me, it was the complete opposite. And I was like, take my phone away. I do not want to look at social media. And for him, it was like going through the pictures, and it was a really safe way for me to be like, okay, this is what he needs, and I'm going to do what I need. And unfortunately, because it happened a couple more times with experience, you then understand how your body responds to these things. Obviously, they're not all the same, and it's not like a plug and play situation. It's always terrible, but you at least, I think, have the knowledge to allow yourself that space to feel it properly.
Well, I can't thank you enough for being so open and candid with me. And if those are listening who've got addiction problems or they need someone to talk to because mentally they're not right there, the Samaritans.org.uk is a website to use. Call them on 116123. The Samaritans are a charity that we have in the UK, Kevin, that help people who have got mental health illnesses, addiction problems,
Hmm.
and it's just a really good place to talk. Obviously, you're doing the frogs now. What would you think that Mark and Naya and Corey will be thinking as they look down on you now and see you perform and just have your moment on stage as Kevin McHale, the one who's been working for the past over 20 years to get to this stage of being the star man?
Oh, I think they'd be all for it. We all love the arts and what it can do, and performing in any capacity. And so I think, yeah, that they would absolutely love that I was doing it. It's also been, such a big fear of mine to do theater. And this past year, this is my second show in 6, 7 months. So, and we all talked about that. Everybody, wanted to do it at some point. Corey was such a serious actor. Naya had been acting since she was a child and was one of the most talented people I've ever been around. And so, I think in another life, they absolutely would have been doing something like this as well. And so it's a natural progression for where we were at and the type of things we were doing. And so I think it makes sense. They would definitely, they'd show up, they would see it because that's what we do.
And then you'd all go for chicken tenders afterwards together because you love a chicken
That's
tender.
right.
There you
Oh
go.
yeah. Oh, and we could eat. It was a group effort. That's what we did the most as a group.
I love that. I love that. Let's talk about Xanthias and the Frogs. It's at the Southwark Playhouse from the 21st of May. What's the show all about, my friend?
It's based off of Aristophanes' play, but it's loosely based. It's a satire. It's very relevant to today. It's silly. It's so fun. It's a journey with Dionysus and Xanthias go to the underworld to bring back a great writer because he feels the state of the world needs someone to communicate to the people to inform them better. We need more art. Art communicates that, and so through that, it's like a really wonderful um, show to be a part of because it is a great time. And if you're just looking to have a great time, a great night at the theater, it is fully that. But then there's also a really poignant and timely message within it. And I love satire. Glee was a satire. I clearly have a type of thing that I respond to, and it's a show I would go see even if I wasn't involved. Um, and so it's just, yeah, I think people will really enjoy it. And it's Nathan Lane wrote it and post 9/11. It was on Broadway as sort of a commentary at the state of the world. And fortunately, it seems like we need a little more commentary today. Um, but at the same time, it's not sort of this relentless hitting you over the head with politics. It's subtle, it's quick, um, and it's just a lot of joy and fun.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Final question for you, my friend. Obviously, we are about 3 years away from when you joined Glee. Is there going to be a Glee reunion? Glee older now, and you're still singing Don't
Right.
Stop Flipping Believing, and you're still
Oh
in your
God.
wheelchair singing Proud.
Um, I don't know. I mean, to be honest, I don't know what that looks like without, Corey and Naya. Um,
We do a dedication at the O2 in London, and we do a tribute to S Club 7, which is a band that we have here.
Yeah.
They lost one of
Hmm.
their members, Paul, and they did a tribute in the middle to Paul, and they had Paul singing and them standing around it from the music videos. And I
Oh
think you
wow.
would do a tribute to that and a best of
Okay.
all the Glee songs again. I'll
Yeah.
write the show for you. You perform,
Okay.
I'll
Yeah,
write
it's
it for you.
great. Okay.
But can we have a Glee reunion? Because it just takes me back to such a happier time of my life.
I mean, I'm all for that, especially if we go to the O2 again. Are you kidding me? I was backstage there last week just randomly, and I hadn't been there since we performed there. It was my first time seeing a show there, and all those memories came flooding back. And I was like, it was the best. I absolutely loved it. So if that was the reunion, some sort of tour or performances like that, I'm all for it. Yeah.
We've got 3 years. Let's build it, my friend. If we build it, they
Okay.
will come. Um,
Yeah, let's just put it out there.
a massive thank you to Kevin McHale. You can see the frogs at the Southwark Playhouse in London from the 23rd of May to the 28th of June. For more information, visit southwarkplayhouse.co.uk. And obviously, during the conversation today, we spoke about grief, we spoke about coming out. If you're affected by either of those, please do check out www.samaritans.org.uk or call them on 116 123. That's it for Second in Skill this week. If you love the Fiesta like I did, there are episodes in the library of the cast of Mean Girls the musical, Back to the Future the musical, and Grease the musical, to name a few. And if you enjoyed today's episode, leave a 5-star rating, click that follow button, and let's keep spreading the word. It's okay to not be okay on social media, on TikTok at Johnny Seifert 92, on Instagram at Johnny Seifert, at Skill in Skill podcast, where you can find me. Kevin, where can people find you?
Just search Kevin McHale, you'll find me. You
You'll
know,
find me.
you'll find me.
Come to the Southwark Playhouse. You'll
I'm the
find
one
him
saying
there.
stupid stuff. Yeah.
I'm Johnny Seifert. Thanks so much for watching or listening. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.